Now, we do have an expert joining us in the studio as well. We have Dr. Bong Young-shik, researcher at the Young-shik Institute for North Korean Studies, our regular contributor in Arirang TV and highly in demand in various stations around the nation. Thank you so much for making time for us.
Thanks for the kind words.
Well, I know you're a very busy man and very tired and very bursting with a lot of knowledge and insights into various developments so far. Let's first start by turning to our Kim Min-ji, who has been standing by with us in the studio for a brisk rundown of the presser that President Moon Jae-in held immediately upon arrival in South Korea.
Yep, so like you said, as soon as he arrived in South Korea, he visited the main press center in DDP in central Seoul. Now, he first started by thanking the Korean people for their support and also thanked the North Koreans for the warm welcome that he received. He said that he met Kim Jong-un a lot of times. In fact, it's 12 official occasions that they met. And they held candid talks and were able to build trust and develop their ties. Now here he said most of his first summit talks were used to talk about denuclearization, and he also saw Kim Jong-un's commitment to denuclearization. He said, in fact, Kim Jong-un is ready to accelerate denuclearization of his country in exchange for security guarantees from the U.S. Now, more exactly, in the summit agreement we saw yesterday, they said if the U.S. makes takes corresponding measures, North Korea is also willing to shut down its Yongbyon facility. So they said there are items that they did not discuss or did not include in the joint declaration, and those messages will be delivered to the U.S. side in detail when he meets with U.S. President Donald Trump next week.
I think that those were the key words that really woke up a lot of people who were watching and listening there. On that note, Dr. Bong, would you like to elaborate on the possible discussion subjects that has not been highlighted yet by President Moon Jae-in once he speaks to his American counterparts and officials there?
Well, I mean, it seems like this summit meeting between President Moon Jae-in and Chairman Kim Jong-un have achieved the three main goals that was elaborated by the Blue House before President Moon's departure to Pyongyang. One is the improvement of the security conditions on the Korean Peninsula. I would say that they can check the checkbox because there's a series of the confidence building measures and tension reduction measures. Although a lot of things are still subject to further negotiations by higher ranked military officials. Second thing was the improvement of inter-Korean cooperation. I would say that they made many big important promises of resuming or beginning major economic projects, but everything depends on lifting or diluting of existing economic sanctions on North Korea. So it is waited to be seen. The third one is denuclearization on the Korean Peninsula. I think that is the agenda, the Article 5 of the joint statement, receiving the most criticism and suspicion because there is no definite declaration of verifiable willingness or specific timetable or even list of the nuclear and missile materials and facilities and programs Mr. Kim Jong-un himself declared to dismantle. So there is a bit of a disappointment, but the Blue House explanation is that issue is not an issue that to be decided between the two leaders of Korea, and there's a lot more important developments that cannot be contained in the letters of the joint statement by the two leaders. So the show goes on, and we have to wait and see what is going to be decided between U.S. and DPRK in the future meetings. The first site will be the meeting between Mr. Stephen Biegun and his counterpart, probably Mr. Choi Sang-hee of the Foreign Ministry.
Right, this will be an
in
important
Vienna.
debut for Stephen Biegun.
And the other one is meeting between Secretary Mike Pompeo and his counterpart Lee Yong-ho in the sidelines of the General Assembly meeting of the United Nations in New York. And if things goes well, then we can expect to see another summit meeting between President Donald Trump and Chairman Kim Jong-un.
Right. Turning back to you, Min-ji, it seems like the footage we saw just now was the signing and the announcement of the declaration. It seemed very systematically and fluidly carried out compared to, I guess, previous sessions.
You mean the press conference that they had today?
Right, and also when the two leaders first signed and announced and showed the agreement that was signed.
Yeah, so yesterday, before they went into the signing of the Pyeongyang Declaration, their expressions were kind of very, very firm.
All business.
That's right, because we saw all smiles when they first met at the airport, but when they were actually getting down to business, he had more of a serious look. Now, when they actually started the joint press conference yesterday together, it was actually the first time that North Korean leader Kim Jong-un expressed his willingness to denuclearize, and that was what people were actually looking for, to see whether this statement would include North Korea's denuclearization process, or whether he would make a verbal response in terms of denuclearization.
Right, the official agenda, denuclearization during a summit, this is unprecedented, right, Dr. Bong?
Well, I'm a little bit cautious to wholeheartedly accept the explanations given by the South Korean government. I would have much liked to listen to the explanations directly from horse's mouth, which is North Korean authority. But it was, once again, not Chairman Kim Jong-un, but South Korean authority, President Moon Jae-in, elaborate on what the Article 5 of the joint statement regarding denuclearization on the Korean Peninsula would be in more specific terms. And it was South Korean authority, not North Korean leader himself, to explain that we have confirmed the genuine intention, very strong will of North Korean authority to carry out denuclearization. So we have not really heard the word directly from the supreme authority of North Korean system. Some people say that given the nature of North Korean system, it will be very difficult, if not impossible, for Mr. Kim Jong-un to actually utter the word that we are going to lay down our nuclear weapons and missiles, which North Korean constitution is hinged upon. Because the preamble of the North Korean constitution since 2013 officially defined North Korea as a nuclear power state. So anybody saying anything, even in slight, reinterpretation or even transgression of that constitutional definition, will be against the republic. So it might be a very difficult task even for Mr. Kim Jong-un, even though he's the absolute authority in North Korea. Having said that, I still believe that there are a lot other ways that Mr. Kim Jong-un, as a supreme authority of North Korea, could have confirmed the genuine intention of North Korea to carry out verifiable and clear steps toward complete denuclearization on the Korean Peninsula, if he was as determined as portrayed and confirmed by South Korean President Moon Jae-in. For instance, the special envoy sent by Moon Jae-in government prior to this summit meeting confirmed that they had heard directly from Mr. Kim Jong-un that he laments the misunderstanding and the lack of trust in his own words for denuclearization as an absolute goal that North Korea desires to achieve. And they also said that, Mr. Kim Jong-un himself said that the goal is to achieve the complete denuclearization on the Korean Peninsula before the end of the first term of presidency of Donald Trump of the United States. And Mike Pompeo just reiterated that as a basic schedule. If Mr. Kim Jong-un actually said that many times and very clearly to South Korean envoys, then he could have said that in any form during these 3 days as a very clear indication that North Korea means business. North Korea has a genuine and unwavering intention to carry out its promises toward denuclearization with very specific timetable. Very specific timetable has been the missing part that the United States has been pointing out that should be confirmed by North Korean authority in response to North Korea's demand for official declaration of the end of the Korean War in return. So the definition of complete denuclearization or timetable or list of nuclear materials and programs, facilities, and the missile parts that the United States have been demanding North Korea are not part of this joint statement issued by two Korean governments. It might be impossible for these two Korean governments to actually work on these important agendas, and you can say that all these issues are basically to be handled by North Korea and the United States. But since it was Moon Jae-in government of South Korea to actually enumerate one of three major agendas on the table to be discussed, it is a rather glaring absence in what could have been a very wonderful and successful summit meeting between the two Korean authorities.
Maybe a day more could have provided a chance for them to fill in more details. But going back to what you mentioned a little bit, I was just curious about the wording by North Korea in President Trump's first term. How would you look at that instead of the current term? They mentioned specifically President Trump's first term.
The January of the 2021, right?
Right.
And even though in terms of the date, it might be a very specific timetable, we still left with a very ambiguous definition of the meaning of complete denuclearization. The North Korea only promised that it will pursue complete denuclearization by the end of the first term of President Trump's first term. It is still debatable what would constitute complete denuclearization. The meaning of complete denuclearization may mean different things to North Korea, China, US, and South Korea. So some people might play that statement by Chairman Kim Jong-un as a very clear demonstration of the willingness and determination to move toward the denuclearization of North Korea with a specific timetable. But other people would still question that the door is still open, ajar, because North Korea can always backpedal by saying that, our definition of complete denuclearization is misunderstood by you.
Right, North Korea still has a long ways to go in terms of winning back the trust of the international community. They do not have exactly a great track record for staying on course in the past. Going back to you, Min-ji, a very interesting development, the highlight of the summit on the last day itself was the Mount Baekdusan trip by the two leaders. Could you fill us in on some of the details?
So it wasn't prearranged, they say. The Blue House says it was announced yesterday abruptly that the two leaders would be visiting Baekdusan Mountain. And it's considered sacred and highlighted as a symbol of Korean identity because it goes down in Korean history, stretching back more than 5,000 years. And President Moon Jae-in had requested a number of times that he wanted to visit Baekdusan using the North Korean route instead of the Chinese route, and obviously it was a dream come true for him. And we saw in the footage we got earlier that the South Korean delegation also accompanied them. So if I give you a little bit of background information, the South Korean myth has it that it was the birthplace of Tangun, which is the legendary founder of Korea who ruled for 1,500 years. And also in North Korea, it says the ruling Kim family is said to be descended, so that's why they call themselves the Baekdu bloodline. Some have said that because President Moon Jae-in and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has visited here, it may also spur more tours to the mountain
There were
itself.
mentioned by the North Korean leader himself. The two leaders did talk about, we wish more people could come and visit here. I wish more South Koreans could come and visit. Average Joes could come and visit. And North Korean Kim Jong-un did respond by saying, someday we could open this to even foreign visitors someday soon, which is somewhat linked to economic cooperation ventures in the future between the two Koreas.
That's right. So back in 2007, when then President Roh Moo-hyun visited, when he held a summit with Kim Jong-il, they actually promised to hold tours on the mountain. However, that was never carried out. Even earlier in 2005, Hyundai Asan, the operator of Mount Kumgang tour programs, and the Korean Tourism Organization had agreed to jointly push for the tour program, but it never made progress after conservatives took power in South Korea Korea. So we will have to see if they do resume these kind of tours. But like the professor mentioned earlier, sanctions are still imposed on North Korea. So resuming these tours, we'll have to wait and see.
So, Professor Bong, it looks like there's still a lot of heavy responsibility and expectations on the part of President Moon Jae-in. How much steps has he helped take between North Korea and the U.S. in terms of trying to pull Pyongyang and Washington closer in terms of their distance differences in the timeline, the sequence to the end of war, denuclearization?
This monster called the ending the Korean War since 1953 and ending another monster called North Korea's nuclear missile threats are enormous and heavy. So it is only natural of all related parties to take so much Herculean effort and patience and very effective strategy. So we got to be really patient. So there is a lot of suspicions and criticism you can render to any agreement you forged with North Korean authority, including the joint statement just produced this time, the Pyeongyang Declaration. My criticism is made by rather absolute standards, but you got to build on however small successes you have delineated from every time you engage with North Korean authority, and this is no exception. So patient engagement should be the strategy taken by Washington as well as by Pyongyang